Hello, and welcome to Elle's Bedtime Stories number 11, totally written by AI. But, with my very specific instructions this time, it's a fanfic. It's called My Retro Gamer Girl. So let us begin. The seaside boardwalk bustled with the vibrant energy of a warm summer evening. The scent of salt water mingled with the sweet aroma of carnival treats wafting from nearby stalls. Above the sun-kissed the horizon, casting a warm glow over the ocean. The rhythmic crash of waves provided a soothing backdrop to the chatter of families and the occasional laughter of children. Kurumi's eyes widened as he stumbled upon a sight that seemed utterly out of place in his favorite retro game shop's vicinity. There she was, the girl he'd been trying so hard to avoid, Nobeta, his class crush, lounging at a beachfront cafe with her trademark pink hat and jacket, seemingly at odds with the warmth of the day. Her tight purple and white bikini peeked out from underneath, hinting at the tantalizing curves she usually kept hidden beneath her school uniform. He gulped, clutching a vintage game cartridge to his chest, feeling both annoyed and thrilled by her presence. She was supposed to be in her usual spot, hunched over a book in the school library, not invading his secret sanctuary. He marched over, determination etched into every line of his face. Kourumi approached the cafe with a swagger of someone who just found a cheat code for a particularly challenging game. "Hey, you," he called out, voice dripping with feigned annoyance. "Why are you stalking me?" He gestured dramatically to the game shop behind him. "This is my turf. Didn't think you'd be caught dead out of the library." Nobeta looked up from her milkshake, a playful smirk curling the corners of her lips. She adjusted her hat slightly, ensuring it cast a shadow over her piercing pink eyes. "Oh, Kourumi," she cooed. "How flattering of you to think I'd follow you all the way here." Nobeta's smirk grew into a full-blown smile as she took a sip of her strawberry milkshake, the cool sweetness a delightful contrast to the warm evening. She set the glass down with a gentle thud, her eyes sparkling mischievously. "You know," she began, her voice carrying the gentle lilt of someone who's just found an Easter egg in their favorite game. "I've been coming here for ages, even before I knew you had such eclectic tastes." She paused, her gaze flicking to the game cartridge in his hand. "Is that a Chrono Storm you've got there? I've heard it's quite the hidden gem." Kourumi blinked, his cheeks flushing a shade darker than the crimson of the setting sky. "Chrono Storm? That's..." He sputtered, momentarily at a loss for words. "How do you even know about that?" He tried to play it cool, but the tremor in his hand betrayed his surprise. He leaned against the railing of the cafe, the chipped paint digging slightly into his skin. "But yeah," he recovered. "It's a classic, a real collector's item. Not everyone appreciates it, though. Most think it's overrated." Nobeta's smile didn't waver, the pink of her irises seeming to dance in the fading light. She leaned back in her chair, the wood creaking slightly. "Oh, I know quite a bit, Kourumi. I've always had a soft spot for games that take you on the journey through time, like Chrono Storm or Timeline Tangle, for instance." She ticked the titles off on her finger, her nails painted a glossy black to match the darkening night. Kurumi's expression morphed from shock to disbelief as he stared at Nobeta. "You're kidding, right?" he scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest. "Those are like the holy grails of retro gaming. How does someone like you even know about them?" He couldn't resist the urge to challenge her. "But I guess you're not as clueless as you look, evil lolly woman." The teasing nickname rolled off his tongue, hinting at the crush he vehemently denied. Nobeta giggled at Kurumi's skepticism, her eyes gleaming with the same excitement as when she first discovered the hidden secrets of Timeline Tangle. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspirational whisper as a cool evening breeze gently tugged at the strings of her hat. "You'd be surprised what an evil lolly woman like me gets up to when she's not casting spells over dusty old books." She took another sip of her milkshake, the straw slurping against the ice. "My favorite is Chronostorm's time-warping adventure. It's like nothing I've ever played before." Kurumi's disbelief grew as he listened to Nobeta wax lyrical about the retro games he held so dear. He leaned in closer, his curiosity piqued, despite his feigned indifference. "Oh, really?" he said with a smirk in his eyes, glinting with challenge. "And here I thought you only knew how to brew potions and hex your enemies." He paused, watching the way the neon lights from the nearby arcade reflected in her eyes. "But if you're such a gaming guru, tell me, what do you think of Galaxy Guardian? I've got the complete set, CIB, and it's supposedly worth a small fortune." Nobeta giggled lightly, the sound as sweet as the milkshake she held. She took a moment to savor the strawberry blend before speaking. "Ah, Galaxy Guardian, the saga of a young boy's quest to save the universe from an interstellar menace," she mused. "He's a classic, no doubt, but a bit predictable, don't you think?" She winked playfully. "I mean, come on, Kourumi. Where's the thrill in saving the same damsel in distress every level?" She took another sip of her milkshake, watching him over the rim of the glass. "But tell me," she purred, her voice as smooth as a creamy concoction, "what's your favorite part? The pixelated explosions or the cheesy dialogue?" Kurumi's eyes narrowed slightly at Nobeta's teasing critique, his cheeks flushing even more. "You just don't get it," he grumbled, his voice a mix of annoyance and affection. "It's not just about the gameplay, it's about the nostalgia, the challenge, the story behind the pixels." He leaned over the railing, watching the waves roll in. "But I guess that's too much for someone who thinks Earthbound is the epitome of gaming." He glanced at her, a smirk playing on his lips. "Besides, I've never seen you play anything that doesn't involve casting spells or summoning demons." Kourumi couldn't help but feel a little smug at the thought of introducing Nobeta to the gritty underbelly of the gaming world she seemed so keen on exploring. He pushed off from the railing with a grunt, his flip-flops smacking against the wooden floorboards as he took a step closer to her. "All right, Miss High and Mighty, what's your favorite game?" he challenged, his tone playfully mocking. "Let's see if you can name anything that's not mainstream or covered in glitter and rainbows." He waved the Chronostorm cartridge in her face for emphasis, the plastic casing glinting in the fading light of the boardwalk's neon signs. Nobeta's smirk grew into a full smile, her eyes shimmering with amusement. She leaned back in her chair, the plastic groaning under her weight, and took a dramatic pause, her finger tapping thoughtfully against the side of her milkshake glass. "Well," she began, her voice as smooth as the waves lapping against the shore. my tastes do lean towards the less mainstream. She took a deep breath, savoring the moment. I've always had a soft spot for Lunar Labyrinth and Crypt of the Necromancer. Kourumi rolled his eyes, his smirk deepening. Lunar Labyrinth? That's so last millennium. And Crypt of the Necromancer? The game's been rehashed more times than a fast food burger. Surely you can do better, Nobeta. He leaned in closer, the scent of his ocean breeze cologne blending with the salt in the air. But if you want a real challenge, he whispered, you should try Cosmic Chaos. The vivid tapestry of the boardwalk grew more colorful as the neon lights of the arcade reflected on the faces of the passers-by. The distant laughter of children playing in the sand melded with a rhythmic throb of music from a beachside concert stage. The air grew cooler as the evening deepened, the stars peeking out one by one like shy debutantes at a grand ball. As the night grew more vibrant with the influx of beachgoers seeking the thrill of the boardwalk's nocturnal entertainment, the cacophony of laughter and the jingle of arcade games grew louder. Two figures, recognizable as Nobeta's friends from school, sashayed towards the cafe, their giggles piercing the air like the calls of sirens. One, a brunette with a penchant for gothic Lolita fashion, had her arm draped around the other, a bubbly blonde who radiated an infectious energy. They spotted Nobeta, and their eyes grew wide as they approached. The brunette, known for her dramatic flair, waved her hand theatrically. "Nobeta!" she explained, her voice a delightful mix of surprise and excitement. The blonde friend, equally as cheerful, bounced over to them. "Look what we found!" she squealed, holding up a neon yo-yo that glowed with the vibrancy of the arcade lights. Kurumi's eyes darted between the two newcomers, his grip on the Chronostorm cartridge tightening. His heart thumped in his chest as he took a step back, the urge to flee from this unexpected social situation strong. Kourumi felt a bead of sweat form on his brow as the two vivid figures of Nobeta's friends approached. The brunette's gothic Lolita attire fluttered around her like the dark wings of a raven, and the blonde's energy was as bright as the neon lights reflecting in her eyes. He took a step back, his eyes darting between them like a cornered animal seeking escape. "Hey, I gotta..." he stammered, his voice trailing off as he gestured vaguely towards the game shop. The awkwardness was palpable, a thick fog that threatened to suffocate him. Nobeta's smile grew even wider as she took in the sight of her approaching friends. She recognized their giddy excitement from afar, like a beacon in the crowded boardwalk. The brunette's dark hair, shimmered with a fading light of day, and the blonde's laughter was as bright as the stars that had just begun to emerge. She watched Kurumi's retreating form with amusement, the tension in his shoulders speaking louder than his awkward stammers. "Kourumi, wait up!" she called, her voice as sweet and inviting as the siren song that lured sailors to their doom. She slid off the chair, her bare feet hitting the warm wooden floorboards with a gentle slap. Her hand shot out, fingers wrapping around his wrist before he could take another step. "Don't be a party pooper," she whispered in his ear, her breath hot and minty. "You can't just leave me with these two and their yo-yo shenanigans." She tugged him gently back towards the table, her grip firm but unyielding. Kurumi's heart skipped a beat as Nobeta's cool fingers wrapped around his wrist, pulling him back into the fray. He could feel the heat from her body, and the smell of her strawberry milkshake was almost as overwhelming as the situation he found himself in. He whispered under his breath, "What the hell? Let me go!" But she only tightened her grip, her pink eyes glinting with mischief. The brunette and blonde had already reached the table, their gazes flickering between Kourumi and Nobeta in a silent symphony of confusion. "Who's this?" the brunette asked, her voice a melodic purr that seemed to echo through the night. The blonde held the neon yo-yo at arm's length, watching the toy spin with a dizzying grace. "You guys know Kourumi," Nobeta said, her voice as smooth as the strawberry milkshake she just consumed. "He's just helping me appreciate the finer points of retro gaming." Nobeta's grip on Kurumi's wrist was firm, but not painful, a silent reminder of the thrilling game she had caught him in. "You know, Kourumi," she said with a playful smirk, "you really should be more social." She turned to her friends, her smile as welcoming as the warm embrace of a sunset. "This is Kourumi. He's got quite the collection of retro games," she said, her voice dripping with sweet sarcasm. The brunette raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, and the blonde's eyes lit up with curiosity. Kurumi's heart thundered in his chest as the two friends closed in, their curiosity as palpable as the humid sea air. He whispered through gritted teeth, "Evil lowly woman, let go of me!" His voice a low growl that seemed to be swallowed by the cacophony of the boardwalk. Yet Nobeta's grasp remained unyielding, a silent declaration of victory. Her friends looked at him with a mix of surprise and amusement, the brunette's eyes narrowing and the blonde's smile growing even wider. "What's going on here?" the brunette inquired, her tone a blend of suspicion and excitement. The blonde chimed in, her voice as bright as a yo-yo in her hand. "Yeah, we didn't know you had a thing for retro games, Nobeta. You two look like you're in a secret mission." The brunette leaned against the table, her gothic Lolita attire stark against the vibrant beach setting. She eyed Kourumi up and down, her gaze as sharp as the stiletto heels she wore. "He's not your type, Nobeta," she said, her voice as smooth as a jazz tune wafting from a nearby cafe. "You can do better than a nerd who thinks Chrono Storm is the peak of gaming." The blonde nodded eagerly, her pigtails bobbing in agreement. "Yeah, you need someone with more pizzazz." The yo-yo spun around her finger, a neon blur that seemed to mock Kurumi's discomfort. Kourumi felt the weight of the world crushing down on his shoulders as the words pierced through him like a well-aimed dagger. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. The neon lights of the arcade seemed to pulse in time with his racing heart. He looked from one friend to the other, their smirks making him feel like a bug under a microscope. I should go," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the clank of the nearby pinball machines. He tried to pull away, but Nobeta's grip held firm. Nobeta felt a twinge of satisfaction at Kurumi's discomfort, a ghost of the teasing smirks from the beach incident and the pool incident flitting through her mind. But as she looked into his eyes, he saw genuine panic, and her heart softened. She didn't like the way her friends were eyeing him like a rare Pokemon card, ready to snatch him up for their own amusement. "Hold on," she said, her voice a gentle caress that seemed to cut through the din of the boardwalk. She released his wrist and turned to her friends, her eyes flashing with a seriousness that was as rare as a glitch in a game's code. Kurumi's actually really good at retro games. He's been helping me find some hidden gems, like Chrono Storm. She paused, her gaze lingering on the cartridge still clutched in his hand. We're just discussing strategy. Nobeta watched as the blush on Kurumi's cheeks deepened to a shade that would put a lobster to shame. She took a step closer, placing her hand on his arm in a comforting gesture. Her touch was surprisingly gentle, given her usual mischievous demeanor. Don't worry, she whispered, her voice a secret shared in a library's quiet corner. They don't know about that. She leaned in, her breath tickling his ear. But I do need your help, she said, her eyes gleaming with a challenge. Before he could protest, she had grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. Come on, I need your expertise to find some rare CIB games. She tugged him gently, but insistently away from the table. Her friends' laughter trailing behind them, like the echo of a well-timed video game victory tune. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The brunette called out, Don't do anything we wouldn't do, and the blonde added, Which means anything goes, with the laughter of her friends fading behind them. Nobeta led Kourumi through the throngs of people, her grip on his hand as constant as the rhythm of the waves. The neon lights of the arcade beckoned like a siren's call, promising a haven from the prying eyes of the boardwalk. His heart raced in his chest, but as they stepped into the game center, the cool embrace of the air conditioning washed over him like a sigh of relief. Nobeta's eyes scanned the rows of retro game consoles, the glow of the screens painting her face in a kaleidoscope of colors. The sound of 8-bit tunes and the clatter of coins filled the air, like a symphony of nostalgia. She looked up at Kourumi, her pink irises reflecting the neon lights. You okay? She asked, her voice softer than the whispers of the ocean at night. He nodded, the weight of his earlier embarrassment lifting like a fog. Yeah, he murmured, his voice a little more relaxed. I guess this isn't so bad. Kourumi allowed himself to be led through the arcade, his heart still racing, but for a different reason now. The coolness of the air conditioning was a stark contrast to the heat of the beach outside, and he took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The smells of popcorn and arcade grease filled his nose, comforting scents that were as familiar to him as the layout of his own bedroom. As they approached the line of retro game cabinets, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. As the cacophony of the arcade swallowed them, Kourumi felt a sense of comfort wash over him. The lights from the screens danced across Nobeta's face, making her look like a digital pixie. He glanced down at their entwined hands, his heart skipping a beat. You know, he said, his voice low and gruff, you're not half bad for an evil, lolly woman. He couldn't believe the words that slipped from his lips. He had spent so much time trying to resist the pull of her charm. But here he was, standing in the neon embrace of his favorite arcade, holding her hand. Nobeta's smile grew wider, the corners of her eyes crinkling with amusement. She looked up at Kourumi, the neon lights from the games casting a rainbow of colors across her face. Oh, really? She said, her voice as playful as the jingle of arcade coins. She tugged him closer to a Chrono Storm cabinet, the game's protagonist frozen mid-leap on the screen. "You're not so bad yourself, Kourumi," she whispered, her breath warm against his cheek. "For someone who thinks Earthbound is the epitome of gaming, you've got surprising depth." She leaned in, her eyes locked on his. "Besides," she added, with a wink, "you've got the best taste in rare games." The sound of the ocean outside was lost in the symphony of 8-bit soundtracks. Their world, reduced to the pulsating lights and the electricity that crackled in the air between them. The end! Did you guys enjoy that? I know I did. That was fun. Alright, so that was the end of Elle-C's Bedtime Stories number 11. See you next time. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I'm a cute little girl with a jaded face. Elle is my name and 13 is my age. I'm not just a lolly and that's a fact. I'll praise and cheer for all your super chats. Please subscribe.